Good morning, everybody. Welcome to an amazing episode of Sales Chatter. Good morning, Jeff. How you doing this morning, brother?
Morning.
Awesome to see you, brother. And how did last night go?
It went okay. Let's put it this way: it could have gone a lot better. I think it had to deal with some of the marketing that we did on it, but I'm not disappointed. It's a first step of many. So, our next event is going to be after Christmas. I mean, there's no reason to have it, during the holidays right now, and everybody's going to be really busy. So, we're going to we're going to put our heads together, come up with a good event, and probably be about mid-January, somewhere around there, maybe the second or third week in January. But yeah, it was okay.
All right, well, let's get started, my friend.
Let's do it.
Welcome to the HPLS podcast. Live, relevant, and high performance information, conversations, and education weekly.
I want to say good morning, Lisa. Always here. Always
Morning,
appreciate the
Lisa.
support. Oh, happy to see you, Jeff. There's been something going on since August that I've been seeing all over social media, and I want to get our thoughts on it today because I think it's something that's actually really important. And
Mm.
I'm just going to show a clip. We're going to be talking about quiet quitting today. I know everybody has their thoughts on it. So for those who don't know what quiet quitting is, I just grabbed this video off of TikTok. It's a video that went viral, and yeah, let's take our ears to listen.
Learned about this term called quiet quitting, where you're not outright quitting your job, but you're quitting the idea of going above and beyond. You're still performing your duties, but you're no longer subscribing to the hustle culture mentality that work has to be your life. The reality is it's not, and your worth as a person is not defined by your labor.
And that was a video that honestly has over 2 million views and I think about 500,000 shares on TikTok. So it's gone viral. I've seen it all over LinkedIn and things like that. And I had a discussion with my wife, Keshri, about this because she actually works in the medical field, and just to get her thoughts because we think that in sales and even logistics, we're always go go go, right? Like when you
Yeah.
get into the industry, Jeff, people always say, "Hey, it's a 24/7 job," right? And it's true to some certain extent, but we'll kind of get into it. So, with that being said, I believe like quiet quitting, it's really taking the time to realize your values and your worth, and what you're actually valued, right? Recognizing and enforcing boundaries to yourself. I would say when it comes to quiet quitting, my kind of thoughts is that it doesn't really apply to our industry. Well, it doesn't apply to our industry, the actual quiet quitting, but the end result of quiet quitting, it does. And the end result of that, Jeff, is burnout. Just basically working yourself way too hard. And, you know, it's also about letting people know how you want to be treated. And I think boundaries are so important because, I'm sorry, Jeff, I love this conversation we're going to have because we both represent two kind of demographics, right? Kind of in terms of like that. Um, one of the things is that we read is that the older generation, they were kind of incentivized with like 401k promotions, longevity, right? You look at the old corporate ladder, you go to school, come out of school, you get a job right away. You work there 9 to 5 for 40 years, go on one
Just
vacation a
golden
year,
watch.
retire. Exactly, right? And then you retire and then you're ready to go, right? And then you get a nice big cake on your last day. As we kind of see, the next generation, which is millennials, is that they're incentivized with 3 to 5 year goals, right? So they're not. It's rare to see anybody really at a job for 40 years anymore. And then the next generation of Gen Z is that they want their needs fit now. Um, Jeff, I want to kind of get your thoughts because I think it's going to be a great discussion to have both. What is quiet quitting to you? And I know we had a discussion like soon, but when somebody says quiet quitting, what does that look like to you?
You know, um, I'm going to be honest. I understand it, but I don't understand it. And I say that because I've read a lot of articles as well over the last several months on this, and I found it quite interesting because in a lot of cases that what I've read, people have been on the job for many, many years, and then they start what slowing down. Let's not call it quiet quitting, but I don't know if they're under supported or what their feelings is, but they don't put the output out that they have in the past. And my question is that why did it take 8 years or 6 years? What about the management of these people and what are they doing? And then all of a sudden they notice it. It's not like it just happened overnight. This is progression. This is stuff that develops over a period of time that puts an individual in that position who makes them feel uh, unwanted, unsupported. They feel like they're in a dead end. I mean, let's face it, the millennials, they don't want to wait for bonuses and raises. And I think a lot of recruiters would agree with me out there that there's more employees, workers out there that are jumping ship really quick. They don't have that loyalty that they used to have. They don't have the patience in their positions. And so they would rather jump ship and take a $10,000 increase in pay than to sit there in that position for a year and then get that review, get that raise, get that bonus. And I see that quite often. And I've had this conversation with a lot of people. So it's a different world out there for sure. But where we used to be ridiculed for job jumping, you heard that all the time, oh, it's on the resume. You had, 8 jobs or 9 jobs, it automatically tells an employer, this girl not loyal, they're not going to stay here. So why are we going to put all that effort and time and money into this individual to train them and not going to stay on board? Because it costs a company a lot of money to train them and to put them in that position to be successful. The question I have is what happened after that? What made a person want to quiet quit? That's the key right there. What did they didn't do, or what did they not notice? I mean, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, Jeff, I was reading a book yesterday, and one of the things they talked about was that, and we've always heard about this, right? We've got what time, health, and money, right? So when we're young, we have we have time and we have health. When we reach the middle age, we have basically the opposite. We have money, we have health, but we don't have time. And then when we get old, we have the money and time, and we don't have the health, right? And I think one of the important things, because it's kind of cool to have this discussion, because I know when I worked in the corporate life, I remember
Mhm.
how it was, and now that I'm thinking about it, I did quiet quit in my corporate life, and the reason is because you get the two raises every year, and I'll be honest with you, it was like 25 cents. What is 25 cents really going to do for me, right? And this was when I worked in more, not in logistics supply chain. This was a corporation for a telecom
Right.
company, and I read a stat was saying was like in 2005 and 2007, companies started adding benefits for therapy, like talk therapy, right? And I feel like we've never had that, because
Oh,
even before, we've like, even growing up, it's like not necessarily that man up, or like if you're going like, you couldn't talk about your problems, you'd be labeled as soft, or just chin up or anything like that, right? And I think people realize that they need therapy to kind of like navigate through their life. They need to talk to somebody. Like, I don't know about you, Jeff, but sales chatter is therapy for me. Being able to talk to you guys every single day, talk to everybody here, and it's amazing. So I think what it is that people have kind of figured out that they don't want to give too much, because they're not going to get the receiving end of it, right? And it kind of goes back to what we were kind of saying, like back in the old days, like you work a job for 40 years and then you're done, so you're loyal to that company. The company will take care of you. You got some sick days and things like that. But
mm,
even Dean was talking about yesterday, we got rail strike, possibly, and the thing that's holding it up is paid sick leave. Think about that, right? Paid sick leave. In Ontario right now, anybody who's watching Ontario, we have a huge teacher strike that's actually about to happen tomorrow. The Canadian Union of Public Employees, CUPE, they're asking for a raise because teachers are overworked.
mm.
We actually read a stat yesterday, is that all the MPs in Ontario, they gave themselves $16,000 raises this year, but they will not give a raise to teachers for $3.25 an hour. you know it's about kind of like being value. And one thing that really irked me too, and why I understand quiet quitting, Jeff, is that during the pandemic, people were chanting how heroes doctors and nurses are, right? Like people are banging pots and pans on the side of the road as they enter work, and all that stuff. And our healthcare is at a collapse right now in Ontario, and nurses are being overworked, doctors too. They're actually going into cosmetic. A lot of people are actually leaving it, and you can't. I remember some people were like sick like last week. It's like a 4 hour wait to get into a walk-in clinic, not the hospital, a walk-in clinic for a headache. So Jeff, I kind of, now that we're kind of talking about it, and you had that question about like, hey, what does quiet quitting look like, and why do people do it from there? Um, do you think the pandemic kind of helped because there was basically almost 2 years of either working from home or there was people not working at all? Do you think that contributed to this kind of what's going on right now?
Yeah, I think so on that. But I want to go back to what you were saying about the health and people being labeled soft. What I think, and I strongly believe in, is that it comes down to leaders and followers.
Mhm.
And when I say that, a really good manager who's a leader is going to be more empathetic towards their associates. It's not always going to be about work, right? I always had an open door policy, and all the employees that worked for me, they knew that if they had a problem, they could come in and talk to me. It didn't have to be work related. It could be about their personal life, because let's face it, some people, you may think that they're really, really good. They have no issues. They have no problems. They don't share it. And lo and behold, you find out they're having personal problems in their life. And let's face it, those personal problems have direct impact on the employee's work and the ability to produce, because they're either stressed out or something's going on with their relationships in their personal life. And so if you're an empathetic leader and you have a good understanding, because let's face it, when you're in that role, you have to be like a chameleon, almost like a psychologist, because you're managing different personalities and different problems that each one of your employees has. So if you have an open mind and that open door policy where they feel comfortable coming in to tell you about their problems, that's what that's what really makes a company and office tick, when you have that ability to do that. A lot of my bosses that I've had in my past, were like that. So I kind of took that lead and pushed it forward. I think that's a big problem when managers cut their associates off and don't want to hear about them. They're more like, you have to do this, you have to do that, you haven't been doing this, and etc. Right? But if they just got a little bit more empathetic and listened to their people, you'd be surprised how much more productivity you'll get on them, because those associates are going to say, you know what, that guy cares about me, you know? And that's really important. And when you come into the pandemic and now you're not in that office environment and you're remote, you don't have that support. You could still have your family problems, right? But now those family problems could be magnified 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 times, because you're not pulled out of that environment now going to the office, right? But you're still under the pressure to produce, right? Because now companies got really creative and started creating metrics to understand, where that employee is he hitting those
Yeah,
quotas or whatever. So very, very difficult. But I believe that this goes back before the pandemic. I think quiet quitting has to do with managers quitting on their employees.
I love that.
That's, I think, is a major issue, when they are more about me than my associates, and they should be more about the associates, not themselves. So that's what I think.
I love that, Jeff. And DJ actually brings up a great point here. Like, it is exactly what you're saying, is that people quit their bosses and leadership because of two reasons: either lack of inspiration or lack of belief in leadership. There are two exact reasons why he's quit any job or venture in the past. And, you know, I love what you say there, because one of the things that I've kind of noticed is that, when somebody gets promoted to like a manager,
Mhm.
especially in sales, it's always because of their sales record, right? It's always about, hey, they're in the President's Club, their highest performer. One thing I'll share with you is it's cool, because it's amazing to see, is that my first job, Jeff, I worked at McDonald's. I was 15 years old and I worked at McDonald's, and I worked my butt off till I actually got promoted. I was the youngest manager at that branch. I actually got promoted at age 16. 6 months
Nice.
in, I got promoted. And here's the thing that brought it in together. When I got promoted, they actually sent me to Mick University. Like Mick University is actually a thing. It's a training thing that you go for 2 weeks, and you're there to learn how to become a manager, how to be person, how to manage people. So, and my biggest thing was that I'm 16 years old and I'm managing people who are almost double my age, and those things that I feel like that's lacking when somebody gets promoted is that they don't go through the necessary steps of like, okay, I was a great salesperson or a great ops person. How do I be a great leader? And I know there's resources and people can do that, but I feel like companies, it should be included in their benefits or like their pay or anything like that, because you've invested in that person to be your manager. So, like you don't promote somebody that you're like, oh, they're gonna use this to pat their resume and then leave, right? So people get promoted to stay. So being able to have like that leadership program and then letting them understand, okay, this is how you manage people. Because I know a lot of people, Jeff, say is that, I'm going to lead by example. Even I tried it when I worked at McDonald's. Like, oh no, these guys will see me all working hard. I'll get on the floor, I'll scrape the ground and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, what is that doing? People are just seeing that. But I need to lead by example because I need to manage a whole store. Right.
Correct.
So like you kind of said, people kind of leave leaders and things like that. Where, like you said, this has kind of been before the pandemic. And I like, have you ever come across anybody, even yourself, but even like a family member or a friend, just venting to you, like, I just don't feel valued, thinking about a change. And, what kind of advice did you give them or did they give you?
Yeah, and this is a sad story. When I was at Ford, I had one of my associates. She was always late, constantly, all the time, and we couldn't just like fire her. And I started asking certain questions and everything, and we had to go to arbitration. And it was very, very sad because she was a fantastic employee. But what I was saying before is that she had some personal issues at the home, and her husband didn't want her working, and she wanted to work. And so she was getting pulled in many different directions, and she was misleading me and all this. But I was catching on, and so she went all the way to the end and went through arbitration. At the end, she said, "I'm really, really sorry, but my husband doesn't want me to work, and I love working there and everything." So it was a very tough situation, like that, when you have to go to that extent. But I understood it, and it was a person she had to live with. She didn't have to live with the company she was working there, and she had to face that individual every single day. So when I talk about being empathetic and trying to get on that side of that person and their problems, it's really key. Um, and that helped me to develop to ask even more questions to other associates. And the other thing is that when I was with Snyder, they had a program called MAP, Management Assessment Program, which helped develop high producing associates to the next level. And there were steps within that MAP process. That's why they call it mapping, to put them through those certain steps in order to get them to that management level, where they would succeed and not be left behind. And I did that for a couple of people, and they went on to really, really good, high-paying jobs and directors and stuff like that. So yes, to answer your question, you do have to have programs. I believe that corporations should have those type of step processes in order to develop, their top performing individual. And I got to say this: you can't have a trophy employee, meaning that you don't care about the other employees, and this guy or girl who is producing, you're just strictly focusing that you have to treat everybody as an equal, but do notice their accomplishments and then help them along. It's like what you said: a good leader gets in there with their troops and does exactly what they do, lead by example. And that's what you have to do. And then the associates, when they see this other individual who's selected, it's not about, oh, why didn't I get that and all that. No, it shows that if you do certain things, you can be in that person's seat too. And if you're a good leader, you're going to treat everybody as equal. So everybody has equal opportunity to do the same damn thing as that person that was selected. So Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You just can't throw somebody in the hot seat and expect them to do what you do or even what your bosses do. It's just not going to work. They're going to fail miserably if they don't have that support.
100%.
And
And I want to get,
that's
I
what
want
they're going to do. They're going to quiet quit on that. If you get thrown into a fire and you can't put that fire out, you're going to burn out, and you're going to want to leave pretty quickly.
And I want to look at a different perspective about it, right? Because people think quiet quitting. So you're doing kind of like you're doing your job, right? You're there, you're doing your 9 to 5 or anything like that. And I think people are just putting more effort into their self and their family priorities. I know Dan kind of mentioned it, like, there's times that he worked and he was like, he was told he's gonna cut out family time. And I made a point to kind of say, like, my family time, my sleep time is non-negotiable, right? Like
Right.
those things are for me. So I think, we have all these resources around us. And even gaps in resumes. And Michael Zellick, he's amazing HR professional. Definitely hit him for a follow because he definitely has a lot of great content. And he says that quiet quitting reminds him of when his teachers work to rule, which we're actually facing that in Ontario right now. Is that the thing that he noticed that they didn't have school sports anymore? So you think about that, Jeff, right? You look at teachers, right? Like they're there to really teach. Like let's say it's history teacher or be your homeroom teacher and like that. Things like sports are things that those are add-ons for them, right? Like doing the basketball team or doing track and field and doing volleyball. So those are
Yeah.
things that they don't no longer need to do. And when I kind of look at um, quiet quitting and spending time with that family, because when you get home, you want to be able to look at your family's goals, right? Nobody wants to be working all day at their desk because you get burnout, right? And burnout, it doesn't benefit anybody at the end of the day, right? I don't think burnout is something that you want to you want to expire. We got that hustle culture and everybody has great things. And Kyle brings up a great point, and Zalik could actually agree to this as well. It's like, his employees have never quit because he's doing a great job of being a manager and being there for them. And I know at
That's key.
Wellington Group of Companies, they do that. They truly care. It's more than a pizza party. It's more than I Wellington is probably one of the only companies I went to that the CEO would shake my hand and say thank you. Thank you for doing an amazing job. And it's simple things like that. But you know, I think when it comes to quiet quitting, we're looking at people right now. They're interviewing for jobs. Some companies, they've got like a 10 interview process, right? And then it's like they terminate them, and then they're stuck in limbo for months. A big thing that I saw in Ontario is that during the pandemic, our Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, he created something called a benefit called CERB, where basically everyone who applied for it, they got $2,000 a month, right? So all the restaurants were closed, Walmarts were closed. You can only go to groceries, like those were the only things, right? And what I saw was that everyone who was working in the restaurant industry, they took that money and they invested it in themselves, right? They started their own side businesses. They did their side hustles. You know how many companies I've seen, like companies that are like catering companies or makeup art, like different niches that they've done so well in their own side hustles that they're like, screw this. I'm just going to work for myself. I'm not going to work for a corporation anymore. Right. And I've been reading like numbers on even like YouTube, like Jeff, you can legit make a life off of YouTube. And those opportunities wasn't around like 30, 40 years. So
No.
when you have options, when people kind of say, hey, we got a workplace shortage, it's just the wages are not matching inflation, right? And, it's like, I remember the times where I worked an entry level job and like I was barely getting by. So it's like, why I'm taking 2 hours to get to work, I'm there for 8 hours. I'm taking 2 hours to get home. And then there's days I couldn't even afford lunch, right? And it was like, what am I doing this for? Right. And it just doesn't make sense. And there has to be like an addition and subtraction from there.
Sure.
In terms of like your work, because I know you're working on this with your health as well. Is there sacrifices that you're willing to make in your personal life to make that higher so that like, your work is here,
Yeah.
like from there?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's part of it, right? Being able to sacrifice in order to get to that next level. It's not easy. It's not. Let's go back to what you were saying. You're talking about hairdressers and restaurant workers and stuff. Look what happened to them during the pandemic when you didn't have the patrons coming in there, or you couldn't wash hair. These people were left, out to dry per se. Talk about their self worth. They didn't feel that because they didn't have that communication or those touch points with the people that they saw every week, doing their hair or serving them at a restaurant. And those are the people that got affected more than anybody else, let's face it, the logistics industry, supply chain, yeah, we were working remote, but we were working remote. We always had that opportunity in front of us. We had that computer. So yes, we could continue to work, but those people that were out there, I mean, just think about what sacrifice could they have done? There is no sacrifice because they were left out. They didn't make any money. They couldn't survive. And you said that Trudeau gave out that CERB at $2,000 a month, right? I mean, and they were trying to invest in themselves. But think about the people that were in that role for
Yeah.
10, 15 years, doing it every single week. And now that valve is cut off. That revenue stream is no longer there, right? I mean, just think about those people and how much they suffered. And you talk about sacrifice, how many of them, are still in that position that they were in the past, and how many changed roles, right? And got
Yeah.
into different things. So, yeah, sacrifice. I did a lot of that, and it hurt bad. It really did to move up, a good leader. I got yelled at a lot. I got ridiculed. I got pulled to the side, and I was thankful for my bosses and the people that I reported to that did that, because they just didn't do that. They cared. They wanted me to succeed, and they took the time out of their lives to spend time with me to make sure that I could go up to the next level. They could have left me out high and dry and just said, "Jeff, you're out of here," and then others, they don't even do that kind of stuff. So that's what I tried to push forward. Like I said in the beginning, man, to take that and mirror that image, because that's what a good leader does. And you talk about the sacrifice. They sacrifice their own position because they should be concentrating on things that they have to do because they report to their boss too, but yet they take the time out to give that personal attention to the associate that's lacking off, and that's why quiet quitting is happening, because I believe strongly that those leaders out there, so-called leaders, aren't doing that. They're not putting that personal attention into their employees. And then what happens is that it manifests over time. And that's when their productivity goes up here, that starts dropping down. They're unwanted. They
Yeah.
leave,
And I think,
terrible.
Jeff, the thing we have to understand is like this is high performance logistics sales chatter, and not everyone is gonna have a company. Not everyone's gonna have that go getter spirit, and that's perfectly fine. So just for
It
them
is.
to understand that like work balance and like they are a spoke on the wheel, and not being replaceable. And David brings up a great point here, like entrepreneurship stems out of problems we face in the real world. If you're not finding solutions at the place that you're working on, maybe create on your own. And it's important to think that, because we do have options now, right? Like, let's say, I know when my dad was working like 20, 25 years as a shipping manager, I couldn't think of him quitting and going somewhere else. There was no LinkedIn, there was no recruiters. Those were the days you look in the newspaper and you look in the classifieds, and who wants to go to an
Exactly.
unknown? And another part of that too, Jeff, is that the grass is not always greener on the other side, right? And it's where you water it and you kind of build that. But I think just putting importance into your family, I know for myself, taking vacation time, to spending time, Sundays, I wear Apple Watch 6 days a week. Sundays, I leave my Apple Watch and I leave my phone alone, because at the end of the day, it's me time. It's my time. It's my time to reset so that I can come back and crush it Monday to Friday, right?
Yeah, got
Um,
chisel that time out for sure.
you got to choose out the time for yourself, and I think that's what quiet quitting at least means to me, is to the point of like, you're doing the bare minimum, and you're prioritizing yourself and your values, and you're making the boundaries that I'm not going to cross this, and we've seen it, right? Like, the people say that you can pick anything in the world, but you can't pick your family, right? And the one thing that we kind of see is like, sometimes you got to set boundaries with your own family, and that's you can quiet quit your own family as well when you think about it, right? And I've been lucky and blessed so much that I grew up in an amazing house that we never really had those kind of things. But talking to people, having conversations with people, like, people have traumas, and that's why therapy is so important for some people, right? And I
Yeah.
think with you, Jeff, like you're saying, like with the sacrifices and like people quit leaders and everything like that. Um, like you said, you had an open door at the thing. How did that make you feel as a leader that somebody would be willing to come in and talk to you, especially the person who's always late?
I tell you, in my whole career, that was one of the most satisfying things that I took away so far. Because it's like the old adage, treat people the way you want to be treated, right? So if you put yourself in that position and say that, reverse it, I can't go and talk to him, man. He's not going to understand. She's not going to understand this. I surely can't discuss this with my family because I don't want to bring them into my work life, and vice versa, right?
Mhm.
So the thing is that a good leader has to be able to see that, to see that you can't just have tunnel vision. If you're controlling a lot of people in your office and everything, like I said, you have to be a chameleon. You have to be almost like a psychologist and master different personalities. You have to be out there on the floor. You can't just sit in your office and let things happen. You have to be present. You have to listen. You have to be a great listener. And those little things that are said, are those trigger mechanisms, like, what? It could be an associate talking to another associate. You just catch that. And then that's when you talk to your people and say, hey, listen, just want to let everybody know, I have an open door policy. If anything happens, to come up, don't be afraid to come in. What's said is between you and me. I'm not going to share that. I want you to feel comfortable. That's the empathetic side of a leader. You can't just be strict all the time and expect your subordinates to lead, because remember, you're only as good as the people that are supporting you in your office that you have control of. They fail, you fail. So that's why you have to be a great listener and listening what's happening in that office. And don't be afraid to ask or pry, but be tactful in doing that, to let that associate know that it is okay to talk with you. I think that's the biggest key that's going to shut that valve off on quiet quitting. Support your people, uh, let them know that, that you have a heart that's not all about work, and listen to them and converse with them. Take them out to lunch, take the
Yeah,
group out to lunch.
get to know
It's
them,
very
and
easy. It's
you know,
not a hard task. It
it's
really
not.
isn't.
It's not. And you know what, Jeff? Like, even the word quiet quitting, I feel like it's nothing new. It's just always had different words, right? Like coasting, not being valued. Like they just had different words for it. And as you're talking, it brings up
Milking the job.
exactly. It brings up what we talked about yesterday with Dean at the beginning with drivers, right? Like just not being appreciated. And you know, it's okay. So as a society, all of us, we need to function, right? Truck
Yeah.
drivers need to bring their stuff into product so our consumers, we can purchase and like that. But it even starts at there, like how many truck drivers do you think of like quiet quit, like they're just going through the motions. We have like, people who are like, they've decided that I want to be home on weekends, I want to be home at the end of the night. So they're going to take shorter hauls and things like that. So they're prioritizing their values and their family, knowing that but gone are days up at that. Go ahead.
Here's a great example. Okay. Look at the way that we feel as consumers or logistics managers, supply chain managers, when drivers go on strike at at a at a port or as a company, and they picket and everything, right? How do you feel, right? Oh, you appreciate them when those things happen, right? Because you're dependent on it. You want that supply to come in there. You want your inventory there, right? But why does it always take a catastrophic event such as that
Yeah.
to make you aware of how important these people are? The same thing happens in a damn office. Well, if you think about it. So why do we act the way we do when a strike happens, right? Act that way every single day and appreciate those things so that these drivers, pay them a little bit more, that you won't have to worry about them. And on the backside, they're going to take care of you like they do anyway, but you're not going to have to worry is, how am I going to make a profit on my product? How am I going to get my product here now? It's, I don't know. It gets me pissed off sometimes that it always takes a damn catastrophic event for people to wake up. But they know it already, but they don't want to say anything. They can't
Biggest
say thank you. I mean, thank you. Thank you to the drivers that are out there that are busting their ass day in and day out, to put the products on the shelves that we, not just logistics and supply chain professionals, but as consumers, we help to put that stuff out there and we buy that stuff. So you got to really think about this, guys. I mean, start appreciating those drivers out there. Start appreciating your associates who work for you. It's easy. It's not a hard thing to do.
And you know what? It reminds me of like relationships, right? Like we've all had boyfriends and girlfriends before we get married and things like that. And they've one or the other happens, right? When a relationship ends, somebody's quiet quit the relationship, right? Like they broke up with you maybe 2 3 weeks in their mind, and then they gotta physically say it, right? And I think it's just about appreciation because we're seeing all the news like we said with the teachers, and that's a huge topic right now. Like our government has had billion-dollar surpluses, on their budget, but they're not going to pay the teachers who are more important. I think teachers, police officers, anybody in that kind of essential is really important. And it's crazy because like the answer is so simple. Just appreciate people. It doesn't cost you anything to be nice. And DJ, if you're still watching, you put me on to Jay Shetty, and he had the CEO of YouTube, Shelly Wojcicki, I believe, on the episode. And they asked her at the end, what's the one thing that you wish you had more of? And she said work-life balance, and this episode was like 2 days. Go check out that podcast. And you're talking about the CEO of YouTube here, and she's like, I shut off, I do take away, I do quit not quit my job, I do tune off, every single day so that I can come back in tomorrow ready and focused, right? Because something in 2 hours, if I get something to think about, it's not really going to matter. We think everything's so urgent, urgent, urgent. You and I, we can be plugging away, doing our prospecting or talking to customers, and that email comes or that call comes, and we're like, oh my God, I need to be there right away. And that's how people kind of see it as well, because I think quiet quitting, you're looking at the different sectors of industries. Like I look at finance. I know you're talking about the pandemic. I know so many people who are like project managers and things like that. They had to do all these Zoom calls every day while managing kids. Just imagine about that, right? Like, that's two jobs right there. And then their mental frustration is just like there. And I don't know about you, Jeff, but like everybody was home during the pandemic, and I'm a person, I like space. So if my wife, it was like I need to have my own kind of space. And Lisa kind of mentions here is like, it's so simple. It feels good to show appreciation. And
It does.
I'm every day I'm so grateful. I wake up every morning. I'm
Yeah,
grateful
me
that
too. Me
get
too,
to talk to
brother.
you guys. I get to kind of bounce ideas off of you with everything like that. But being a good leader, being a good manager, having that work-life balance and valuing life. Jeff, after because you brought the subject up to me on Monday, understanding that hey, it's really about work-life balance. What's something that you're personally going to do to like ensure that what, this is me working and this is my family balance? What are you going to do to kind of make it even, or even make your family life even better?
Well, and I get to do that a little bit more now because I'm not in the corporate environment. I chose not to go there anymore, and I have my own business. So I'm in the house. I see my wife a lot. My daughter, she has her own place, so I don't see her that often. But when she does come in, whenever she comes in, I get to see her. I get to spend some time with her. But when you're in a startup and you're an entrepreneur, and that goes for anybody out there. When you first start up your business, you're going to put a lot of time in there, and that work-life balance is not going to really exist because you get so focused on trying to drive your business forward, to make a profit, make a living, support your family. You're going to do whatever you possibly can, and that's where the sacrifice comes in, because it's just not going to happen from osmosis. You get out of it what you put into it. So now that I am where I am, on the weekends, we're always going out to dinner. We're going here, we're going there. I set it up that way. And then the thing is with my wife, though, she works from 3 until 11 at night. So I don't really get to see her. And unless I'm here at my desk, working, she happens to come behind me or whatever, small little conversations like that. So it's a little bit easier on the work-life balance when you're working remote and you're in the home. Working in the office, that's kind of more difficult depending upon your commute. 2 hours in, 2 hours out, 8 to 10 hours in the office. I mean, how much time can you spend with your family? But when you do spend it with your family, make sure it's meaningful. And that time is well spent. Because when you think about it and you're working 14 hours a day and you've got 10 hours, you've got what, 2 hours maybe of time with the family and 8 hours of sleep. So, I mean, when you do spend that time, man, just, spend it wisely, make it worthwhile. You work more and sleep more than you're with your family for sure.
100%. I got a question for you, right? Because when it comes to work, to quiet quitting, it's like, even having hobbies. Um, in knowing your family life because of work, and the answer is going to be yes for everybody, but I want to kind of get your opinion on it. Like, have you ever missed like a birthday, a family event, or anniversary because of work?
Oh yeah, and I regret it. It makes me sad when I talk about it because my work life was more important to me. I know it sounds like crap to say that, but I'm real. I'm honest. So yeah, I missed out on that, and I wouldn't advise that to anybody out there. You're on this earth one time, and you really have to, you know, um, be able to separate. And when you're just gung ho and just high performance, you're just just full of energy all day long. You think that what you're doing is right at the moment, and I can tell you it's wrong. You need to separate. I did that for 25, 30 years, and I missed a lot of stuff with my daughter growing up and stuff like that. I was somewhat of an absent dad, and I feel sorry for that kind of stuff, and it was bad. It was really bad. And now that I have my own business and stuff like that, it's kind of leveling it off a little bit. So my advice is don't do it, folks. Don't do it, man. You're gonna regret it. You're gonna regret it. You're gonna regret it.
And I think that's exactly what quiet quitting is, like people like taking on extra projects with no, okay, imagine you had to sacrifice, let's say your kid's birthday not being there, or your wedding anniversary, that you guys always took. Like I know Dan mentioned, that he had to miss a trip to Italy or something like that with his wife because of work because he became a manager. So like those are nobody just overnight decides to quiet quit, or decide like, hey, I'm gonna do the bare minimum. It's a convolution of events that happen, So hey, I missed my wedding anniversary, my birthday. Nobody said anything. And Damon, amazing person here. Just kind of want to get to this. And, the sacrifices with entrepreneurship is that when the owner is the one person who has to earn enough to hire the first employee and consistently has to put investments into the business and employees, as an entrepreneur, it's a long term gain. But the sacrifices, in the beginning are big. Imagine having to pay people out of money that you're earning until the person, yeah, that's so true, and
Yeah,
and that's the thing about like
it
entrepreneurship.
is.
Yeah.
It is. And you're like, man, I hope that this just keeps on rolling the way it is, and you just start thinking of different ways to develop your company business, to get those profits up, and support your customers. So Damon's definitely right on that.
Mhm.
You're working almost 24/7 in the beginning
Yeah.
because you're it's almost driving it from the seat of your pants because you want to be an entrepreneur, but you don't know how to do it and you've never done it before. So you're reading all these articles, you're staying up late at night, you're trying to dig into your experience and your background, you're trying to unfold that and put it all into a plan. And that plan doesn't develop overnight, man. It takes months and months and months and months and months and failures and failures and failures. And then all of a sudden something clicks and then it starts manifesting itself. But till you get to that time, restless nights, sleepless nights, disengagement with the family, full engagement with your company. Because if you don't do that, it's gonna take you much longer to get where you need to go. So yeah, when Damon says that about that huge sacrifice, you bet your sweet ass it is. But
And,
the
and
rewards after that,
it's amazing. And you know what? That's what I like about this topic because it's not an only entrepreneur. Like everyone's not going to be an entrepreneur. So like I want to
no,
kind of take it from the perspective of the worker. So imagine like you have a business and then you hire somebody. It's about that
yes,
person, right? It's that person who's going to make it blossom, right? And
yeah,
you're talking about all the things that keep you up at night. So you're already stressed. It's the nature of the business, right? So it's like, okay, well, how am I going to take care of Ryan? And making sure that he feels valued enough because all those insecurities that you're showing from starting a business and going through all the motions and all these things, it's like that could be projected onto them. And it's like
oh
that's why
yes,
I think leadership training is so like you're trying to run a business, but leadership training is so important because it's about that person feeling valued. Because I've kind of like learned this, unless you treat people with respect and you're kind and you have that sense of generosity towards them, they'll reciprocate that, right? I don't want to talk to anytime I talk to anybody, I want to get to know who they are. I don't want to get to know who they are as an employee number, right? And at the end of the day, like I like make it a point, like even Marcus when he was on, when he was a janitor, like always be kind to the janitors, and there's a couple social media posts that I've seen, Jeff, is that somebody posts like a picture of like a shopping cart, and like, are you a person who takes a shopping cart back to like
Yeah. You
the
leave it
thing,
in the middle
or
of
do
the
you just
parking
leave it out there, right? And was it you, I think, mentioned yesterday that whatever you do, whatever action you do, it's the next person, it's for the next
lot.
person, in things. So if you don't push that cart back, then that person's
Yeah.
gonna have to do it. Someone's
You're
car can get
you're
wrecked,
not
and
doing
it's like,
it, right. See, one of the other hardest things too, Brian, is that as managers, as leaders, we have problems too. And the one thing that you have to refrain from doing is sharing that distress, your personal problems with your associates. That's where a lot of the problems come for the leader when you need to separate those two. Because let's face it, nobody has a perfect life. But when you project those negativity onto your associates, worst thing that you can ever do, because that productivity is going to go right through the shitter, for sure. And that's where that stress level goes up to that leader, because he's got the pressure of leading his organization, his manager down his throat, his family life. And you really have to be able to absorb that, and then also understand how you can shed those feelings afterwards. That's that me time, that's that balance of life and of your personal life and your business, because you surely can't share that with your group. You just can't. And vice versa, you can't take all the stress from the work and share it with your family. They don't want to hear that kind of stuff. They don't.
and that's what therapy is for, right? Like, again, I find it's better to kind of like
People,
get
a
a
lot of people don't do that. They fail to recognize that they have issues, and they think that they can handle it themselves. That I'll get over this monstrous hill. I know I can do that. And before you know it, I've had a lot of friends where it just absolutely snowballed effect and just manifests itself at a high rate of speed. And you get to that point where there's no turning back, and that's where the issues are going to happen,
Well, it's like
for
they always
sure.
kind of say, like, you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together, right? And you go with people, and that's the one thing that I've kind of taken away from Quiet Quitting is it's about people, the team. It's not about logos. It's not about what you do or what you say. It's about the
Not
people,
about
because
titles. It's not
yeah,
about titles. You
yeah,
talk
nobody cares
about that, like my father-in-law, who was a major general in the U.S. Army. He was always in his troop, and he always said, "You always treat the janitor as you would a CEO, or vice versa, whatever. It's a person. It's an individual. They have feelings just like you. Don't push your ego. Don't make yourself look like you're up here and they're down there. You always say hello to that janitor, and you take the time out of your personal life to have a conversation with that individual. He's no lower, he's no higher than you are. He is a human being. She is a human being. So treat them as such.
And no better thing to end off on that, because that's perfect. I want to thank everybody. Thank you so much, Jeff, for coming out this morning. I think it was a very impactful episode, and it's something that I'm going to keep on going back to, because I think we came with some great points. We had some great audience feedback. We're going to be hitting the replays again at 12 p.m. and 3 p.m. Eastern time on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and all that stuff. And Jeff, he's quiet quit the podcast. So his internet is quiet quit the podcast. But with that being said, thank you so much, everybody. Please like, comment, share it with somebody. I want to thank the
Yeah.
audience this morning.
Thank
It's
you.
been great. And we'll see you guys tomorrow for wins and lessons for the week.
Have a great day, guys.
Centurion Trucking, our motto is people before profit. Today's market requires more transparency, consistency, and focus on what our clients need to win. Centurion Trucking and American Logistics are poised to help their clients achieve and surpass their targets. If you're looking for a team that honors your needs, dreams, and aspirations, then get a hold of Damon at American Logistics or Centurion Trucking and start designing your career today.